Charles Barkley with strong words on two of the NBA's best on the Bill Simmons podcast. Barkley also agreed Duncan would have retired if not for the signing of LaMarcus Aldridge. Skip, do you agree or disagree with Barkley's comments you just heard?
Stephen A. Smith, obviously, I'm a Spurs fan, and predictably, this really ticked me off. Because in my humble estimation, not only is this dead wrong, but it's just wrong-headed. Now, if we're just talking about offensive output this year, okay, I'll give you. I'll give you much better offensively than Tim Duncan is at 39, even though Kobe's Lakers just lost their 10th straight game and basically got booed off the floor at home. At 39, Tim Duncan is almost all about defense. And I'm not being 20/20 hindsight hypocrite here. I've said this to you this year several times on this show. I've said that the Spurs will go as far as Tim Duncan takes them on defense. Do you realize that with Tim Duncan anchoring their defense before he was shelved with the sore knee, they were holding teams to under 90 points a game. In this era of offensive explosions, under 90 points a game. And it was mostly about Tim Duncan, not about Kawhi Leonard, the Defensive Player of the Year. Not that he isn't great at playing defense, but the quarterback, the soul of the defense, as I said, the anchor of the defense is 39-year-old Tim Duncan. He is still the best rim protector in all of basketball. To me, he is one of the best shot changers in all of basketball. He's not going to block 8 shots a game, but he might change 8 or 10 shots a game. And my Spurs are lost without him. Case in point, as you well know, without Tim Duncan at Golden State, my Spurs gave up 120 points to Golden State. And then we saw Saturday night at Cleveland, and I'll be the first to admit I was embarrassed by it. I had a hard time even watching the last quarter of it. My Spurs gave up 37 points in the first quarter without Tim Duncan. Think of that, holding teams to under 90 with him, and all of a sudden you give up to LeBron and company 37 on the way to 117. It's either Tim Duncan or bust on defense for my Spurs. They're lost on defense without him. So as much as I respect Charles Barkley's basketball acumen, he's just wrong about this. He's ignoring one half of basketball, the defensive end of basketball. And Tim Duncan, my Spurs will go as far as Tim Duncan takes them on defense.
I think you're overreacting, and I think you're being a bit too emotional about this. I didn't take Barkley's comments the way that you took them because I didn't take them, as literally as you did. Barkley basically is saying that the Tim Duncan that once could do what he did on a night-in, night-out basis, that Tim Duncan is gone. Barkley knows that Tim Duncan dropped 21 and 12 on a win against the Clippers earlier and 30 and 11 in a loss. He knows that Tim Duncan has had 20-plus point games or whenever he's wanted to this year. Just recently, a couple of weeks ago, Tim Duncan dropped 29 and 10 on the Houston Rockets. Tim Duncan is one of those guys that can do what needs to be done, but the San Antonio Spurs are 39 and 8. They're going to be a top 2 seed in the West. And they've been around long enough to know that this is about what we do in April, May, and June. This ain't about what we do during the regular season. Tim Duncan's a 5-time champion. And so, as a result of that, his level of greatness, but at the same time, Father Time is undefeated. And Tim Duncan is not going to be able to do what he once did on a night-in, night-out basis. Tim Duncan isn't even averaging 30 minutes a game because Popovich doesn't have anybody doing that outside of Kawhi Leonard and LaMarcus Aldridge tinkering around that stuff. They're younger guys, so let them play. Tim Duncan is here to be a veteran, to be a tutor, to be a contributor in that regard, to anchor that defense, and when it really becomes time, he will be ready. That's what this is. So, and Barkley is one of the 50 greatest players in NBA history. He's a Hall of Famer. Barkley knows this. So when Barkley made the statement that he made, I didn't take it as him saying that, Tim Duncan can't play and he's done or whatever. I took it as him saying, look, he's not what he used to be on a day-in, day-out basis. Kobe Bryant is shooting 35% from the field and 25% from three-point range. Yeah, he's averaging 15 points. Tim Duncan shoots 50% of the field. Obviously, he shoots considerably less. He's playing less minutes because he doesn't need to. And so it's really about comparing. Again, I said this to you a couple of weeks ago. It's about comparing people to the level of greatness we're accustomed to seeing from them. That's entirely different than saying they can't play. Tim Duncan can still get it done. And I don't think that Barkley was intimating that he couldn't at all. I just think Barkley was saying, don't expect to see that guy day in and day. You haven't been seeing him, and you're seeing even less and less of that from him because he's not what he used to be because of age, attrition, and father time. But in no way was he implying that Tim Duncan can't do it for a game or can't do it for a series. I don't think Barkley was implying that at all. I really don't. He's too smart for that.
Okay, I'm just going by what I heard. I heard pretty much done. Yeah. I don't know how other to interpret that except pretty much washed up. That's what that sounds like to me. No, it's not. And by the way, yes, it is.
Go ahead.
And go ahead. No, go ahead.
I was just saying to you, that's what I'm saying. I'm saying that Tim Duncan is pretty much done. But that doesn't mean he can't step in and take care of you for a series. Or he can't, like, for example, against the Clippers last year, Skip, there were about 3 games where Tim Duncan was dominant. And the other 4, he wasn't. That's what I'm saying. He can still do it.
Okay. Look, he can do it every night on defense. That's what Charles is ignoring, and you seem to be sweeping under the carpet because
that's fair.
You just made the case to me that I tried not to make. You went down numbers of games Tim has had this year, and you could make a case that even offensively he's been better than Kobe Bryant. And Charles just scoffed at that, like who's having the better year? Again, offensively, well, I don't know. It's probably closer. I was trying to you think it's Duncan?
I think it's Duncan. Duncan's definitely having a better year offensively.
Well, then Charles is really, really, really wrong because you've got Tim better on offense and defense than Kobe Bryant, right?
Yes. So he's wrong in that regard. All I'm saying to you is that when you're measuring somebody against their own greatness, you're speaking about what you can rely upon from them consistently. Not just play, but minutes, energy, et cetera, et cetera. Tim Duncan is the kind of guy that needs 2 days off now for every 1 day he probably plays. That's the kind of thing that you're dealing with. So when we say washed up or whatever, I'm just saying to you it's a matter of interpretation. I don't believe he was saying Tim Duncan can't play. I think he was saying that Tim Duncan, age, attrition, etc. You can't rely on him on a consistent basis the way that you once could. But I think we all know that Tim Duncan, you got 1 game, even at his age, with his mileage. If you got 1 game, you can put Tim Duncan on the floor and he can get it done for you. I think we all know that.
Okay, but my point is, seriously, through the first quarter of the season, until his knees got sore, he didn't need 2 games off to play 1 good one. He was right in rhythm. And seriously, Stephen A., I don't see any drop-off on the defensive end from Tim Duncan. He is still it for the San Antonio Spurs. So, okay, we're good.
I agree with that.
All right, we'll leave it there. According to Skip, the Spurs defense will go as far as Tim Duncan takes them. Up next, Cam Newton explains why his past failures make him a role model to kids today. Skip and Stephen A. will react to Cam after the break.